All right, welcome back to another video here. Today we're continuing our kind of Cold War aspect of the of our revision series. This one's from my Ukrainian sister who keeps on asking for the Cold War stuff to come out a little quickly, but we can talk about that at another point in time. Today we're going to talk about Truman and the rise of McCarthyism and its effects on domestic and foreign policies in the United States and the social cultural impact of the Cold War. All right. So, I really like this quote by James Patterson. Americans have periodically lashed out at radicals, alleged subversives, aliens, immigrants, blacks, Catholics, Jews, and other vulnerable groups who could be blamed for complex problems. And I think that this is like the essence of everything that we're talking about with the Cold War here, right? Um, or the Red Scare, I should say. So America has a clear problem on its hands in terms of this new threat of communism, and it's going to infiltrate itself into kind of every aspect and fiber of American society, and it's going to be a huge point of how they shape their domestic policy. So this really all starts back with FDR, right? FDR was socialist, right? He had the New Deal were socialist policies. They were progressive and socialist policies, and that upset the powers at be, especially the kind of Republican policies and fiscal conservatives amongst the Democrats as well. It upset the people who had all of the power, so they started on this kind of complex anti-communist campaign all the way back in the 1930s. HUAC is going to be established shortly after. FDR is going to embolden J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI to go and investigate these subversives, right? Investigate these communists who have the potential of upsetting the balance of power within the United States. A kind of funny story about how one of the first people that J. Edgar Hoover presented to FDR was FDR's own mother, right? So J. Edgar Hoover really didn't know a lot of boundaries. He's an interesting dude. We talked about him a lot at class. That's the guy with all the files on all of the people going to the civil rights movement. He had files on MLK, on Muhammad Ali, on Malcolm X, on all those guys, right? So after World War II and after the collapse of the Grand Alliance and after, like, especially after Potsdam, where it feels like this Cold War is really going to start to elevate itself, we start to see the semblances of the Red Scare reemerge, and that's why we call this part the second Red Scare or McCarthyism, right? HUAC investigations are going to begin to start again. That results in a lot of things, right? A lot of things. Let's get more here, okay? Um, HUAC investigations are going to start before McCarthyism, but they're going to intensify after Joseph McCarthy comes to prominence, right? Joseph McCarthy is going to be a Republican senator from Wisconsin. He's, for lack of a better word, a nobody in the Republican Party, right? He's kind of an afterthought. He's not one of the kind of top Republican senators. So, kind of on a whim, he makes an allegation that there are communists in the State Department, that there are communists within the United States government, and it kind of he inflames a situation that really wasn't even there to begin with. He uses his political position to create a lot of hype around the topic and gain a lot of personal gain, finances, and fame, right? Kind of in some of the documentaries that we watched in class, he was the nightly news cycle, right? He was very similar to someone like Donald Trump today, where you're going to say something knowing that there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? You're going to say something, it's going to put you in the news cycle, it's going to put you in people's eyes and ears and mouths for the coming days, right? And that's kind of how Joseph McCarthy is going to function. At the end of the day, this whole time period of McCarthyism is known for its exaggeration, paranoia, and completely baseless claims. It's just going to create this crazy climate of fear within the United States society, right? One of the things that it does do is infringe on civil liberties pretty badly, right? We talked in class when people feel unsafe, they sacrifice civil liberties back to the government in order to be made safe again, right? We were fearful of communism. We thought that it was spreading. It was spreading, which backed up our fear even more that it was going to spread even more, right? So McCarthyism doesn't happen without the time as well. That's a really important part of this, right? Without the Soviet Union doing what it was doing in the late 40s into the early 50s, McCarthyism fizzles out. But it's this self-fulfilling prophecy of big, bad, scary does big, bad, scary things. It justifies us calling them big, bad, scary, and now anything that they do is perceived as big, bad, scary, right? Hopefully that makes sense. Um, a lot of people are going to self-censor themselves in this time period, right? That if in a time where on the internet, if you say something, you're labeled woke, right? Very similar idea to being labeled a commie back then, right? If you said something that was progressive or populist or downright leftist, you'd be labeled a communist sympathizer. And that would have a lot of repercussions into your kind of personal and private life, right? You might be blacklisted from your job, you might lose your job, or blacklisted from furthering your career, right? A lot of negative repercussions on your personal life if you are labeled that. So people censored their inner thoughts and kind of kept the line, if you will. When we talked in class, we talked about the three main aspects of American society that McCarthyism is claiming is being affected by communist uprisings, and that is going to be within the government, that is going to be within education, and that is going to be within entertainment. Entertainment is all about the Hollywood 10, where actors, writers, producers are all going to be labeled as trying to promote communist ideas in their works out in Hollywood. Many of these entertainers are going to be called on the carpet by HUAC, and they're going to have committee trials, and they're going to be blacklisted from Hollywood as a result, right? In terms of inside the American government, J. Edgar Hoover in a 5-year period is going to go through 3,000 investigations, 14,000 inquiries, 1,000 dismissals, and thousands of more people are going to resign from their jobs, right? Later on, Truman called the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover the American Gestapo. All right. The Smith Act is going to be passed right around this time that made it illegal to teach the ideas or belong to a group that supported the overthrow of the United States government. So this is grounding the ideas that communism becomes illegal in the United States, right? Again, what I said a few minutes ago, right? All of this stuff is going to be backed up by the Cold War antics of the time, right? So when the Soviets expand, it makes people more afraid. The Truman Doctrine is that declaration of war. It makes people certifiably afraid. The Soviets test the first atomic bomb. It's a credible threat, right? China turns communist. It's expanding. So the Cold War atmosphere definitely plays a role in all of this as well. A little thesis for you guys. The Second Red Scare created an environment of fear that was a result of the rising Cold War tensions. The climate allowed government institutions like HUAC, McCarthy, and Hoover to illegally infringe on civil rights of Americans, or civil liberties of Americans, I guess you could say too. Impact on American life. The leading democracy in the world bans communism, right? That's not democratic. We went against the stuff that created us, right? The freedom of speech, the freedom of thought, the freedom of expression are going to be badly damaged in the 1950s, right? Children, right? We talk about propaganda a lot when it comes to like authoritarian states, but propaganda in America is really effective as well, right? Those nuclear drills that I showed you, that duck and cover song, the fact that people had bomb shelters in their backyard, the fact that Sunday morning comic strips would have anti-communist propaganda and Russian characters that were either dumb or spies or whatever, all played into that fact that this next generation is growing up truly believing that the Russians are the enemy of the United States and that communism is a bad thing, right? Entertainment, we talked about the Hollywood 10 a little bit already, right? But even Hollywood films are going to play into these nuclear themes, right? Characters like Godzilla are gonna come about, and it plays into that nuclear fear. Religion and education. This is going to be kind of the blowing up of like the evangelical Christian movement in the United States, right? You've got a bishop in America in one of these mega churches that says that communism, he denounces communism as a message directly from God in 1954 to 25 million listeners. So you've got this kind of intertwining of religion and this idea of anti-communism, and they're going to go hand in hand around this time period. And that's still true today, where these kind of radical religious groups and these mega churches in the middle of the country are all going to promote these kind of political ideologies. Under Eisenhower, America is going to add a line to the Pledge of Allegiance: "One nation under God." So again, it's this conservative religious movement that's happening in the United States at the same time. That's a really profound impact of the time period. Next episode, I'm going to hit you guys with the Korean War. A McCarthy question. In my opinion, I think it's very easy to kind of write about on a higher level about the impacts that it had on American culture and society. There might not be as many, like, it's not going to be the longest essay in the world, but I think that this could be a very well thought out, very analytical approach to an essay where you're talking about all these like higher level historical themes. So hopefully these help. Let me know if you need anything else when it comes to McCarthyism and the impact on the United States kind of population, culture, their domestic policies, all that stuff. And I'll hit you back in the next episode with the Korean War.